When you're going through a difficult time, it can feel like you're being ignored. The struggles seem endless. The darkness surrounding you is consuming, and no matter how hard you pray or how much you hope, it seems like God is silent. But let me remind you of something crucial. When God is silent, God is working behind the scenes. There is always purpose in the silence, even if we can't immediately see it. So, if you're in a season of waiting, of uncertainty, or of confusion, take heart. The silence is not abandonment, it's preparation. Many of us have experienced moments in life when it feels like the world is against us. It's easy to wonder why things aren't going as planned, why prayers seem unanswered, and why the breakthrough feels so far out of reach. But remember this, just because you can't see God's hand working doesn't mean it isn't. Sometimes the most important work is happening when you can't perceive it, and those are the moments that demand the most faith. The silence from God is not evidence of His absence, it's an invitation to trust in His plan. If you look closely at the lives of many successful people, whether in business, sports, or any other field, they didn't get to where they are by avoiding struggle. They didn't achieve greatness by bypassing the hard times. It was in the silence, in the unseen moments, that they grew, developed, and prepared for the success they would later experience. It's the same for you. The pain you're feeling right now, the frustration, the isolation, it's part of your process. Imagine for a moment that you're an actor in a play. The stage is dark, the audience is waiting, and you're standing behind the curtains wondering when it's your turn to shine. The show is going on, but you can't see what's happening behind the scenes. There are stagehands moving props, lighting technicians adjusting the lights, and directors fine-tuning every detail to ensure that when you step on that stage, everything is in place. All this work is happening in the unseen, yet it's all for the moment when you step into the spotlight. Your life is like that. Behind the scenes, God is working, preparing you for something great. You might not understand why things aren't happening when you want them to, or why you seem stuck in a waiting room of life. But you can trust that God's timing is perfect. Just as the stagehands work tirelessly behind the scenes to make sure the show goes on without a hitch, God is behind the scenes orchestrating your breakthrough. He's aligning circumstances, people, and opportunities in your favor. Even when you can't see the pieces coming together, they are. The silence is part of the process of building something bigger than you could ever imagine. Faith is what bridges the gap between our struggles and the fulfillment of our dreams. When God is silent, it doesn't mean He's forgotten you. It's during these silent times that your faith is being tested, strengthened, and refined. There's a deeper purpose in the waiting, and even when you feel that no one is listening or that you're talking to an empty room, remember this: God is a master at working in the unseen. Think about the way He works in nature. The roots of a tree are beneath the soil, hidden from sight, but they're what nourish and sustain the tree. The same principle applies to your life. While you may not see the growth and progress right now, God is working below the surface, laying the foundation for your future success. Think of the story of Joseph in the Bible. Joseph had dreams of greatness, but instead of walking directly into his destiny, he went through years of suffering and silence. Betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and imprisoned unjustly, it must have felt like God had forgotten him. Yet, during those silent years, God was shaping Joseph, preparing him for the position of power he would one day hold in Egypt. If Joseph had not gone through the silence, the testing, and the preparation, he would not have been ready for the destiny that awaited him. God was working behind the scenes, even when Joseph could not see it. Joseph's life teaches us that just because we don't understand what's happening in the moment, doesn't mean that God isn't at work. When God is silent, it's easy to fall into the trap of doubt. We question our worth, our purpose, and our ability to overcome. But this is where the power of faith comes into play. Faith is the belief in what we cannot see, the trust that, even when we don't understand the why, God is still in control. In those moments when everything feels uncertain, faith becomes our anchor. It's in the silence that faith is tested and refined. You may not see it now, but God is molding you into the person you need to become to handle the success that's coming your way. Without the silence, you wouldn't have the resilience, the wisdom, or the endurance to sustain that success. God uses the silence to prepare you. It might feel like you're stuck, like you're waiting forever, but in that waiting, you are being developed. There are things happening in the unseen, parts of you being transformed that you wouldn't recognize until the time comes. The silence is a cocoon, and in due time you will emerge as something stronger, more capable, and more prepared to take on the next chapter of your life. Sometimes God allows us to experience seasons of silence so we can learn the art of patience, perseverance, and trust. If everything came too easily, if answers were given too quickly, we wouldn't appreciate the lessons we learn in the waiting. Think about the process of a diamond being formed. It doesn't happen overnight. A diamond is created under intense pressure and heat, deep within the earth. The pressure and heat may feel unbearable, but it's in those conditions that the diamond is formed, taking shape into something beautiful and valuable. You are the diamond. Your trials, your struggles, your moments of silence, they are shaping you into something extraordinary. When God is silent, He's not ignoring you. He's preparing you for something more significant, something greater than what you can currently imagine. Trust that the silence is part of your refining process, and when the time is right, you will shine brighter than ever before. The silence doesn't last forever. Just as night gives way to dawn, your season of silence will eventually pass. You might not know when, but you can trust that God's timing is always perfect. Your breakthrough, your moment of victory is coming. It may not come when you expect it, and it may not come in the way you envision, but rest assured that it will come. And when it does, you'll look back at the silence and understand its purpose. You'll see how it strengthened you, taught you patience, and prepared you for what lies ahead. As you walk through this season of waiting, don't lose heart. The silence is not a sign of abandonment. It's a sign of God's deep, unwavering commitment to your growth. Behind the scenes, He is working, orchestrating every detail of your life with love and purpose. When you can't hear His voice, when you can't see His hand, know that He is still there, guiding you, shaping you, and preparing you for something greater. Trust in His timing. Trust in His plan, and when the silence breaks, you'll see the masterpiece He's been working on all along. So, hold on. Keep your faith strong. Trust that God is working behind the scenes. Even when you can't hear His voice, even when it feels like He's silent, remember, He's not absent. He's working on something extraordinary, and when it's your time to step into the light, you'll realize that everything, absolutely everything, was worth the wait. Here are 6 key points from the speech. God's silence is not abandonment. When you're in a season of waiting or struggle, it may feel like God is silent. But this silence doesn't mean He has forgotten you. It's an opportunity to trust in His unseen work behind the scenes. Faith is tested and strengthened. Silence often tests and strengthens our faith. It's in these moments that our belief in God's plan is refined, building resilience and trust in His timing. Preparation. Behind the scenes, just as a play requires unseen preparation before the actor steps on stage, God is working behind the scenes, aligning circumstances, people, and opportunities to prepare you for your breakthrough. The story of Joseph, like Joseph, who endured years of suffering and silence, God often prepares us for greatness through our struggles. Even when we can't see it, God is shaping us for a greater purpose. God uses silence for refinement. The silence is like a cocoon for your soul. It may feel uncomfortable, but it's a process of personal transformation that will lead you to emerge stronger, wiser, and more capable of handling success. Trust in God's perfect timing. Silence is temporary. While you might not know when your breakthrough will come, trust that God's timing is always perfect. When it arrives, you'll see how the silence has prepared you for the greatness ahead. When you're going through a difficult season, it's easy to feel like you've been forgotten or overlooked, especially when you feel like God is silent. You've prayed, hoped, and believed, yet it seems like your cries for help go unheard. This silence can be disorienting and challenging, leading to feelings of abandonment. But it's essential to understand that God's silence is not a sign that He has abandoned you. Rather, it can be an invitation to trust Him in deeper ways, even when you can't perceive His presence. God's silence doesn't mean He's absent or unconcerned. It means that He is at work in ways that we may not immediately understand. In our world, we often equate silence with neglect, especially in relationships. If someone isn't responding to our messages, it feels like they're ignoring us. We tend to interpret silence as distance, but God operates in a completely different way. His silence is not a withdrawal, but a preparation. While it's true that we long to hear from Him, we also need to recognize that God's silence often indicates that He is working behind the scenes, orchestrating events, timing, and opportunities that we may not even be aware of yet. Just like in a relationship where a partner might be quiet, it doesn't necessarily mean they are disinterested. Sometimes they're processing something, thinking deeply, or waiting for the right moment to speak. Similarly, God's silence can be seen as a moment of divine planning. He might be aligning situations and people in your life that will lead to your breakthrough. This alignment takes time. And although we can't see the full picture, God is still moving in ways that will serve our ultimate good. When we can't hear or feel Him, it's important to lean into trust, knowing that His silence is part of His perfect plan. Furthermore, silence often serves as a test of faith. In the absence of obvious answers or responses, we are left with a choice. Do we continue to trust, or do we doubt and give up? When we choose to trust God in the silence, we deepen our relationship with Him. This silent period can be a time of refining our faith, a time when we learn to lean on God's character rather than on our immediate circumstances or desires. It teaches us that faith is not about always receiving answers when we want them, but about trusting that God knows best and that His timing is perfect. In essence, God's silence is not the absence of His presence, but a signal that something significant is happening behind the scenes. He is preparing, refining, and positioning you for something greater than what you can see right now. Even when you feel alone, know that God is still very much involved in your life, guiding, shaping, and working things out in ways you may not yet understand. And when the silence finally breaks, you'll realize that everything you went through was part of a larger divine plan that you couldn't see in the moment. The silence we often experience in our spiritual journey is not just an absence of God's voice. It's a time of testing and strengthening our faith. Faith is not just about believing when everything is going well or when answers seem clear. True faith is tested when we are in the dark, when we can't hear or see God's hand moving, and when it feels like our prayers are not being answered. In these moments, we are given an opportunity to grow stronger in our belief and trust in God, even when the circumstances don't match our expectations. When life is smooth and everything is falling into place, it's easy to feel confident in our faith. But it is often during the silent seasons that we experience the greatest growth. During times of struggle or uncertainty, we are forced to dig deeper into our relationship with God. We can't rely on our own understanding, and that's where our faith is refined. The silence is a crucible. A place where our trust in God is purified, forces us to let go of our dependence on external validation and to anchor ourselves more deeply in the certainty of His promises, even if we can't see them unfolding in front of us. As we go through these challenging moments, it's natural to question whether God is still with us, whether He's still listening, or whether He's abandoned us altogether. But the truth is, God is using the silence to stretch our faith. We are invited to trust not in what we can see or feel, but in the character of God and in His ultimate plan for our lives. We are called to trust that even when He is silent, He is still at work, perfecting, refining, and preparing us for something greater. When God is silent, we are also being asked to move beyond a superficial faith. Many people have faith as long as things are going well. But the true test of faith comes when we don't understand what's happening, or when it seems like nothing is changing. The silence calls us to trust God's character, not just His actions. We are reminded that our faith isn't based on circumstances, but on the unchanging nature of God, who is always faithful, even when we can't see it or feel it. This silent period is where endurance is cultivated. As we wait, we develop the patience and perseverance necessary to carry us through life's challenges. We learn to hold on, not because the answers are clear, but because we believe in the goodness of God's plan. And with each passing day, our faith grows stronger. It's in the silence that we are stretched. Our capacity to trust deepens, and we are prepared for the breakthroughs that are just around the corner. The deeper the silence, the more profound the growth, because it's in those moments of waiting that we develop the kind of faith that can carry us through anything. The idea that God is working behind the scenes even when we can't see it can be difficult to grasp, especially during times of struggle and uncertainty. We often want immediate results, clear signs of progress, or tangible answers to our prayers. However, just because we can't see God's work doesn't mean He isn't actively involved in our lives. Much like the intricate preparations that happen behind the curtains of a stage before the actors step into the spotlight, God is working quietly, aligning everything in our lives for the right moment. His work in the unseen is often what sets the stage for the breakthroughs that we'll experience later. Behind the scenes, God is orchestrating events, connecting people, and setting up circumstances that will lead to our growth and success. We may not understand how or when these things will come together, but we can trust that they are. This process involves the unseen hand of God, aligning the timing and circumstances so that everything falls into place in a way that is far better than we could have ever imagined. We see only a small fraction of the picture at any given time, but God sees it all. His timing and His plan are always perfect, even when we feel like we're in the dark. Think of the way an artist works on a painting. The artist might be adding layers of color, shading, and detail that are not immediately visible to the viewer. These layers are essential to creating the final masterpiece, even though they aren't seen until the work is complete. Similarly, God is adding layers to our lives, preparing us in ways that are often invisible to us. These preparations might be happening in the form of lessons, growth in character, or the development of patience, things we might not recognize until we look back on our journey. It's easy to become discouraged when progress feels slow or when we don't see immediate results. However, it's important to remember that the slow, unseen work is often the most significant. God's work behind the scenes is setting the foundation for our success. Sometimes, the most important things are the ones we can't see. Just as a tree grows roots deep into the soil before it can rise above the ground, we too are being prepared in ways that are hidden from view, but absolutely essential for our growth. The work that God is doing behind the scenes is often what equips us to handle the blessings and challenges that lie ahead. In these moments, the challenge is to trust God even when we can't see the tangible results. Trust that He is aligning everything in your favor, positioning you for success in ways you can't yet comprehend. When the time is right and the curtain rises, you'll be able to look back and understand how all the behind-the-scenes work came together for your benefit. Trust in the unseen, for it is often the foundation of what will one day be revealed. The story of Joseph in the Bible is a powerful example of how God's unseen work during seasons of silence and hardship can prepare us for something greater. Joseph's journey was marked by betrayal, hardship, and injustice. Yet all of these experiences were part of God's plan to position him for greatness. At the beginning of his story, Joseph had dreams of ruling over his family, but instead of walking straight into his destiny, he was thrown into a pit by his brothers, sold into slavery, and then falsely imprisoned. At first glance, these events might seem like the furthest thing from God's plan. In fact, it may have seemed like God had completely abandoned Joseph. However, it's crucial to understand that while Joseph was going through these trials, God was not absent. In fact, God was working behind the scenes, preparing Joseph for the incredible role he would one day play in saving his family and an entire nation. Joseph's time in slavery and prison wasn't wasted. It was a time of development where his character was refined, his leadership skills were honed, and his ability to interpret dreams was nurtured. These experiences were the very things that would later make him the trusted advisor to Pharaoh and a ruler in Egypt. Without the struggle, Joseph would not have been prepared for his destiny. There are many lessons to draw from Joseph's life. First, we learn that suffering and hardship are not signs of God's abandonment, but rather part of His divine plan to shape and refine us for the future. Joseph's faith was tested during his time in the pit, in slavery, and in prison. But through it all, God was with him, guiding him and teaching him valuable lessons that he could not have learned any other way. His ability to forgive his brothers, for example, came from a deep understanding of God's grace and mercy, something he likely developed during his time of hardship. Joseph's story also teaches us that God's timing is not our own. It's easy to become discouraged when we don't see immediate results or when it seems like nothing is happening. But God was working in Joseph's life even when he couldn't see it. When the time was right, God orchestrated events that led to Joseph's rise to power. His time of preparation, though painful, was ultimately a necessary part of fulfilling his purpose. Finally, Joseph's journey shows us that God's silence doesn't mean his absence. Even when Joseph couldn't hear from God or see his hand at work, God was always there, guiding him through the darkest moments. In the same way, God is working in our lives, even when we can't perceive it. Our struggles, no matter how challenging, are often part of the process that prepares us for the future blessings and opportunities that lie ahead. Just as Joseph's life turned out to be a powerful story of redemption, so too can our lives be shaped into something greater than we can currently imagine, even if we can't see it right now. God often uses seasons of silence to refine us. Much like how a diamond is formed under immense pressure and heat, the process of becoming a diamond doesn't happen quickly or easily. A diamond is created deep within the earth where the intense conditions, high pressure and extreme heat, cause the carbon molecules to bond and crystallize. This pressure and heat might seem unbearable in the moment, but it is essential for the diamond to form. Similarly, the silence and trials we experience in life may feel uncomfortable, and we might even question why we're going through such hardship. However, these difficult moments are often the very conditions needed for us to be refined and prepared for what's ahead. Just like the carbon is transformed into a diamond under pressure, our character is shaped and strengthened during the challenging, silent seasons of our lives. The trials we face, whether emotional, physical, or spiritual, are not wasted. They are the tools God uses to mold us into stronger, more resilient individuals. These struggles don't feel good in the moment, but they are the crucible in which we are purified. In the silence, we are often stretched beyond our comfort zones, forced to rely on God's strength rather than our own. This is where true growth occurs, as we learn to trust more deeply and lean on God's wisdom instead of our own understanding. God's refining process is not about punishment, but about preparation. He knows the person we are meant to become and the destiny that awaits us, and He is carefully crafting us to be able to handle that future. Without the pressure of hardship, we might never fully develop the endurance, patience, or character needed to succeed in the life that God has planned for us. Just as a diamond's value is revealed only after it has been put through the pressure of the earth, our true strength and potential are often revealed only after we have endured life's challenges. In the silence, we are also given the opportunity to develop patience and perseverance. These are qualities that are often built slowly, over time, as we wait for God's perfect timing. Patience is not simply the ability to wait, but the ability to maintain a positive attitude and trust God while waiting. In the silence, we are taught to wait on God, to trust that He is at work, even when we can't see the results yet. Perseverance is what keeps us moving forward despite the uncertainty and challenges. It is what helps us endure when the silence seems overwhelming. Ultimately, the silence is not meant to harm us, but to prepare us for the greatness ahead. Like the pressure that transforms carbon into a diamond, the struggles we face in silence shape us into stronger, more capable individuals. The person you are becoming through this process will be the person who can handle the blessings, opportunities, and responsibilities that lie ahead. So when you find yourself in a season of silence and struggle, remember that it's not the end of your story. It's the refining process that is shaping you into someone capable of achieving your purpose and fulfilling your destiny. When we find ourselves in a period of silence, it's easy to become frustrated or discouraged, especially when we are eagerly waiting for something to change, a breakthrough to happen, or an answer to our prayers. However, one of the most important lessons during these quiet, uncertain times is learning to trust in God's perfect timing. Silence doesn't mean that nothing is happening behind the scenes. It's often a sign that God is working things out in ways that we can't yet see. We may not understand why things are taking longer than we anticipated, or why it feels like we're not moving forward, but we can trust that God's timing is always right. God's timing is not based on our own schedule or expectations. While we often want things to happen quickly, God understands what we need and when we need it. His perspective is eternal, and He sees the bigger picture, while we often see only the small piece in front of us. In these moments of waiting, it's essential to remember that God's timing is never early or late. It's always perfect. The delay we experience may not be a denial, but a strategic pause, giving us time to grow, learn, and prepare for what lies ahead. Waiting on God's timing requires us to surrender our own plans and desires. We might have an idea of when things should happen, but God's timing might be different. This doesn't mean He's forgotten us or doesn't care. It simply means He is preparing something greater than we can imagine, and we must trust that He knows when the moment is right for us. It is in the waiting that our trust in God deepens, as we learn to depend on His wisdom rather than our own understanding. We are invited to release our need for control and to trust that God is working in His way and time, even when we can't see it. The process of waiting also teaches us patience. In a world where instant gratification is the norm, waiting can feel uncomfortable, even frustrating, but patience is a virtue that is cultivated over time, and it is often through the waiting periods in our lives that we develop the patience necessary to handle the blessings and responsibilities that God has in store for us. Learning to wait well is an essential part of the growth process. It's not just about enduring the silence, but trusting that in the waiting, God is working on us, refining us, and preparing us for what's to come. When the silence finally breaks, we will often see that God's timing was perfect all along. The pieces of the puzzle will fall into place and we will understand how everything worked together for our good. The waiting period will make sense and we will see that it was all part of God's perfect plan. So while it's easy to become impatient during the silent seasons, remember that God's timing is never wrong. Trust that He is preparing you for something great and that when the time is right, your breakthrough will come. In conclusion, when God is silent, it's not a sign that He has abandoned us. Rather, it's a time of preparation, refinement, and growth. Throughout the silent seasons of life, God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating events and aligning circumstances for our good. While we may not always understand why certain things are happening or why our prayers seem unanswered, we can trust that God's silence is not a denial, but a divine strategy. Just as the most beautiful diamonds are formed under pressure, our faith, character, and trust are developed in the silence and hardship. During these times, our faith is tested and strengthened, and we are invited to lean into trust, knowing that God's timing is always perfect. The process of waiting helps build patience, perseverance, and a deeper dependence on God. We learn to trust in His unseen work and understand that every struggle, every challenge is part of the preparation for the greater purpose He has planned for us. The story of Joseph serves as a powerful reminder that even when we cannot see God's hand at work, He is always moving behind the scenes, aligning people, circumstances, and opportunities to bring about our destiny. And just like Joseph, we may find that the trials and setbacks in our lives were all part of God's perfect plan to position us for greatness. Ultimately, we must remember that silence doesn't mean absence. When God is silent, He is working, refining, and preparing us for a future far greater than we can imagine. By trusting in His perfect timing, we can navigate these silent seasons with hope and confidence, knowing that our breakthrough is coming. And when it does, we'll realize that everything we endured, every moment of waiting, was worth it because it led us to the fulfillment of God's purpose in our lives.